Time is 6:30, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Tasha White, our board chair, is absent this evening, so I, as your vice chair, will be filling in for her. And I'd like to welcome everyone who's attending in person and also welcome those who are attending through Zoom. And I'd like to begin the meeting with a moment of silence. You may wish to remember the victims of 9/11, and you may also wish to think about the people who are struggling every day during this COVID pandemic. Now I'd like to invite all those who are able to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So everyone has had a chance to look at the agenda, and I just want to point out there's been one recent addition to the consent item, and that is to address the system-wide kitchen equipment. Are there any other additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, I'd like to then discuss the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review their minutes? Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I ask all to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, I'd like to move on to my favorite part of the meeting, and that is the spotlight. We have Principal Lofstrand from Decatur High School here to present for us this evening.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Furman. I thought about changing into more professional attire for my presentation tonight, but I couldn't think of a more appropriate outfit to showcase our spotlight tonight, which is on positive culture and climate. It is homecoming week. Thank you, Ms. Tell. And today is Decades Day, so I'm showing off my school spirit. If you have your students coming to school in pajamas tomorrow, it is okay, as tomorrow is Honoring Wellness Wednesday. So tonight I'm going to talk about how we, the staff and students at Decatur High School, how we are supporting the district improvement area of positive culture and climate. So here are the CSD goals under this pillar. And under that are the Decatur High School School Improvement Goals. And I'm going to talk about a few of these tonight, specifically how we're using advisement lessons, how we're using circles during that time, and how all staff are involved in things outside of the classroom. So last year we began the process of rolling out our PBIS branding of being the pack. And we wanted that to grow and become more meaningful for students and for staff. We gathered some feedback on what worked last year and what didn't when it came to our school schedule and student experiences. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you about how we have shifted our work in order to help everyone be more connected to our school. So we have a new schedule. If you have a high schooler, you are aware of this. Our new schedule for this year includes some new components, including advisement twice a week in order to build community within our school, and win time, which is what I need. We began to notice that if a student needed help or enrichment, if they needed to make up work, if they wanted to be in our IB diploma or our career program, if they wanted to be part of a club, all of these things happened before or after school. In some cases, we were asking our students to take our theory of knowledge class to get to school at 7:30 in the morning in order to take this mandatory class for their IB diploma. By changing our schedule and shifting these things into the school day, we can ensure that our students are getting what they need when they need it. Our advisement program has really grown into a meaningful experience for our students. These 30 minutes twice a week have helped us to build strong relationships with students who we don't necessarily teach. It allows us time to learn about school information, show our school spirit, build our social, emotional learning skills, and of course, to have a little fun. So one of our school improvement plan goals is that circles will be used during advisement time to help build community. We have a series of professional learning scheduled during our weekly faculty meetings to teach everyone not only the importance of these circles, but also give them examples of circles that they can immediately use in their advisement to help deepen their relationships with their students. By learning these tools in this way, they can use them as a way to restore relationships in the future if need be. So here are 2 examples of opening circles used in our advisement classes the first couple weeks. During a recent staff training that I did, I asked the staff about something that had gone well during the first 2 weeks of school. More than once, advisement lessons and circle questions were mentioned as a way that our staff connected to students in different ways. As Decatur High School continues its rebranding to be in line with our PBIS matrix, we're creating lessons for the students that allow them to think about what it means to be purposeful, accountable, connected, and kind. We are tying everything we're doing back to these expectations. And it really feels like our students understand our expectations because of the work we have done in advisement. You guys know from PBIS, we teach students how to do math, how to do English, but we tell them what our expectations are for behavior and how we want them to act in the building, but we don't take the time to teach it. Well, advisement time has become that for us. So we had, advisement should also be fun. We have group building activities planned throughout the year as well. This was an activity, Pack Your Room, that our students did at the beginning of August. Their advisements needed to show how we are purposeful, accountable, connected, and kind. And here are some examples of the pack of the doors. So you can see classroom doors, students in different advisements embrace this theme in different ways. But to walk by a classroom door and see students' accounts of how they can be make a positive contribution to our school, I have to be honest with you, it has been a great way to start the school year. All right, so I can stand up here, but now I want you to hear a little bit from our students.
We're all seniors, and we are all a part of the pack because I'm purposeful. I keep my planner around in class, and I make sure I write down all my upcoming assignments.
I'm accountable because I'm always at school on time in the morning, so I can get a good start of the day from first period.
I'm connected by going to different services to the social dogs. I'm kind with making sure everyone feels included and that the school is a safe space.
I feel part of the pack this year because I'm connected to the soccer team, and I like the things we're doing in advisement.
Hi, my name is Paige Arnold, and I'm a 12th grader at Decatur High School, and I love being a part of the pack. I think that it's really important to feel connected, especially after the virtual year that we've had last year when it was really hard to, get together and do that. And I feel like definitely during win time, study halls are in fourth period on Fridays, and advisement, it's like super good to be able to talk to different people and collaborate on, projects or whatever it is that we have to do, just because you get to discuss with other people the importance of, working together, and you can double check your answers or get a peer edit or something. And I just think that's so important to, the development of how we are as students and as friends. Thank you.
So the other way that we stay connected is through our student activities and athletics. In the monthly report that I've turned into Dr. Furman, you will see all that is going on at Decatur High School in our clubs, athletics, and organizations. Our students and staff are super busy. We have over 99 student-run clubs, and I approve a new one every week. The National Center for Educational Statistics published a study looking at extracurricular participation and student engagement. Recent research suggests that participation in extracurricular activities may increase a student's sense of engagement or attachment to their school, and thereby decrease the likelihood of school failure and dropping out. Because of this, I wanted a school improvement plan goal to be not just for the students to participate in extracurricular clubs and activities, but a goal focused on our faculty and staff. Collecting data on how many of our staff are involved in our students' lives outside of the classroom is important to me and to the engagement of our students in our building. A member of my admin team said recently how wonderful it was to see posters around the school again, advertising the Student Center small groups, homecoming posters, club posters, as well as athletics. So I just wanted to share those with you because it's not something we have seen for a very long time. Some other things that we're doing to help with culture and climate. Since all the 9th graders and the 10th graders are in our MYT program, 359 students are in our diploma program, 93 students are in our career program, 77% of our total school is part of our IB program, and 100% of our students take an IB course. So that means that we want to create a whole school identity around being an IB World school. This is very important because we don't want it to be, if 77% of our students are involved in the IB program, we feel that that should be our identity school-wide. MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, is often used to describe students needing academic or behavior intervention. The tier 1 of MTSS is actually all students. So when we're talking about MTSS at Decatur High School, we want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a whole school model and that all students are supported. To increase the climate and culture within our whole community, we ramped up DHS 101. This is done through a partnership with our PTSA. Thanks to what we learned last year, we're recording all of our sessions and they're available on our website. And that's just a little screenshot of our website. Coffee chats are often done at the elementary level, but I know, and you guys know from having elementary kids, it's a great way to teach our parent community about the different programs or initiatives that we're doing at every school. So we are going to have one coffee chat a month. We have already had one, and you can see it's down toward the bottom there. It was on the IB Diploma and Career Program overview, and it was extremely successful. We are now recording them, and they will be posted on our website as well. And finally, we are continuing our work with nominating students and staff for how their work aligns with being purposeful, accountable, connected, and kind. Today, I went with our mascot, Spike, to about 12 classrooms to give out Student of the Month awards. I have to say that that was definitely the highlight. Sorry, y'all, but that was the highlight of my day.
No doubt.
So the next time you're at DHS, take a look at some of our new branding. There are some exciting things going on at our school. We hope to see you at the parade and the football game this Friday. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Principal Ostrand. I love your outfit. I love your enthusiasm and your energy, and I'm certain that it spreads to the students, and that I'm sure that you are rubbing off on them, and I think it's wonderful. I appreciate your efforts to build a positive climate at the school. I know that that's much needed by all the students, and I just also appreciate that you're being responsive to the students' needs and changing the schedules and giving them opportunities to connect and bring some of those outside experiences into the school day. So thank you for all of your work. Thank you. Do any other board members have any comments about the spotlight?
I was just going to say I'm really excited about the Restorative Circles being used during advisement, because not only can we use those Restorative Circles to repair, but to build relationships. And so I'm really excited to hear that you all are using that time for that. And how long is advisement? I was just curious.
So the first 2 weeks of school, it was long because we didn't have wind time yet. So the first couple of weeks, it was an hour and a half, but now it's 30 minutes twice a week.
Okay, thank you.
So the chunks of time are much more manageable, but we really pushed hard the first few weeks on that relationship building in that class. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Next is public comment. We have, how many signed up for this evening?
We have 3 people signed up for public comment. The first is Amy Ratcliffe, and she's via Zoom.
Okay, and before we begin, I just would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that you'll be given 3 minutes. Please state your name and your affiliation with the City Schools of Decatur. And also just a reminder that during public comment, it's not a time to discuss individual grievances. And if you happen to have some, please connect with the board outside of this meeting and we will respond to you accordingly. Thank you. Ms. Radcliffe?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure, goodness, I'm sorry, I'm not able to turn on I'm not sure how to turn on my video. So I'm Amy Ratcliffe, and I'm speaking on behalf of 2 other parents of City School of Decatur students, Catherine Tan and Julie Gutman. We are epidemiologists, and we submitted comments also as a letter to the board. And we applaud and encourage your decision to require vaccinations for all staff and students who are eligible for the COVID-19 vaccines as an additional requirement to indoor masks. We recognize that in-school participation is vital for many children to learn effectively, and protecting our community with as many layers as possible with the interventions that we have is the right decision. As you apply the vaccine requirements and consider how to accommodate those who are ineligible for vaccines, we wanted to address eligibility and spread some information about who is medically eligible for the vaccine. Of course, the broadest exclusion criteria is age, and protecting our middle and grade school children who are not eligible for vaccination is vital as they're under 12 years of age. Our message for you is intended to clarify the exclusion criteria based on the medical reasons for anyone who's 12 or older. The only medical reason that should exclude someone across all of the COVID vaccines is a known and severe allergy to one of the vaccine components. There are a few other health categories that may shape vaccine choice. People can discuss their unresolved heart conditions, a history of blood clots, and people with Guillain-Barré syndrome should consult with their doctors. But vaccination is advisable for anyone who has a pre-existing condition or is in one of the high-risk categories. So we hope to clear up the misperception that there's a long list of reasons that would medically prevent someone from getting vaccinated against COVID. In fact, the only medical reason that should exclude someone across all of the vaccines, as I said, is a severe allergy to one of the vaccine components. So thanks very much for considering these as you formulate policy and begin to roll out vaccine requirements, incentives, and encourage vaccination in our community. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Anna Henson in person.
Hi. Be here. Thank you. My name is Anna Henson. I am the mother of 2 Decatur High School students. I'm on the board of the Decatur Career Academy, and for the past couple of years have conducted core values training for many of our high school students during Career Month. In 2016, my family moved to Decatur for its exceptional school system, which, quote, works to develop curious, self-directed learners who engage in a rigorous and purposeful interdisciplinary curriculum by participating in inquiry, collaboration, the passionate exchange of ideas, and self-reflection. A vaccine mandate, which applies really to less than 20% of students and teachers within our school system, would go against your mission as a school system. With a mandate, you would be telling the kids you teach that no matter how curious, self-directed, self-aware, and autonomous they are in their growth process. There will always be an authoritative power that is ready to squash the direction of their growth and independence if it does not conform. What message would you be sending our students? You would also be undermining parental rights, which supersede any public school district's rights over our children. I understand worry. I am a first-generation off-the-boat Greek mother. But perspective and facts calm me tremendously. I do not buy into the fear that is generated on social media. I do my own research and go from there as to what works with or goes against my family's core values, which are faith, independence, love, courage, perseverance, among others. Per the school-age COVID-19 surveillance report as of September 8th in the state of Georgia, there have been 137,539 total cases in the 5 to 17 age group. There are approximately 88,500 students in all of DeKalb County, including the city of Decatur. About 10% of all students in DeKalb County tested positive for COVID. According to this daily surveillance, the weekly number of reported cases has actually dropped by 22% over this past week. That's fantastic. But there is some sad news. There have been 15 deaths total attributed to COVID-19 in children 2 to 17 in the state of Georgia as of September 8th. These heart-wrenching cases were attributed to obesity, asthma, immunocompromised kids, and other forms of comorbidities. I'm not opposed to COVID vaccines. I am opposed to a vaccine mandate within the school system. With a greater than 80% vax rate, it is unnecessary. It is an overreach of your authority, however, and that is completely unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Next comment is from John Barbie. Mr. Barbie?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My daughter's in the school system here. We have given her all the required vaccines since she was a baby, and we joined the vast majority in support of routine child vaccination. However, there are serious safety concerns with the COVID vaccines, and we don't know long-term implications for our kids. The CDC has confirmed and certified thousands of reports in their VAERS system, 17,794 permanently disabled, 13,627 deaths, 5,093 cases of heart injury. As of July, 419,513 adverse event reports, according to the federal database. No other vaccines in history have had these kinds of numbers. Can you imagine a trip to Eggleston with your son or your daughter, or reading a Decatur-ish article about someone else's child? I personally know of 2 deaths and 5 others who have had very serious reactions to the shots, putting them in the hospital. There are treatment protocols that work. Emory and other clinics are using monoclonal antibodies and drugs that are saving patients and avoiding hospitalization. I have talked with a few physicians and nurses who are using protocols that are working. We are putting all of our eggs in just one basket, focusing so much on vaccines. Masking, distancing, and other mitigation measures are working in our schools. Decatur is doing an amazing job. Amazing. Vaccination does not stop transmission. Vaccination family members are giving it to one another. Fully vaccinated family members are giving it to one another. A CDC study from August proves the vaccinated are spreading the Delta variant just as much as unvaccinated. Also, they report hospitalizations of fully vaccinated up from 1% of the total in January to over 20% in June. Nurse friends working in 3 different hospitals are praising natural immunity. They're not seeing COVID recovered patients in their ICUs. The research is in line with what's happening on the front lines. Emory's Dr. Ahmed's study and at least 14 other studies show the evidence that our immune systems protect us long after recovery, even against the Delta variant. Please do not vote for a COVID vaccine student mandate. Let's put energy into getting our doctors to treat COVID early and to educate us about prevention. Parents, along with our chosen healthcare team, should be allowed to decide whether to vaccinate our kids. Please let us decide what's right for our families. And thank you so much.
Thank you. That's it for the public comment for this evening. Now moving on to the superintendent's comment.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Welcome. Good to see everyone here this evening. For my presentation to get put up on the screen. Thank you, Espen. All right, thank you, Mr. Melton. You can go ahead to the next slide. So just an overview of my topics this evening. I'm going to give some updates on our COVID protocols. I am going to talk a little bit about vaccines for staff and students. And then also I want to share some things that our community can do to help us mitigate COVID, not just in our schools, but also in our communities. I'm going to share my evaluation tool, as well as to discuss briefly, particularly for the board, the monthly updates for the schools that were included in the board packet this week. And then also our superintendent student advisory team that is being formed. And then I want to share some information about all the amazing art that I got. It was so great. All right, thank you, Espen. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so just a reminder for everyone that all of our COVID information is on our CSD website, and that is the place to find the most up-to-date information about mitigation strategies, about our dashboard, and information about any positive COVID cases that have been identified for staff or students in our building, along with the number of quarantined staff and students as well. I did just also want to update, we shared on Friday, that we did kind of do a variation of what was included in our manual with how we responded to a COVID positive case at our Fifth Avenue school, because we realized that things change kind of ongoing when it comes to COVID, what the recommendations are coming out of the public health department. And sometimes we can't keep up with updating our manual in real time. So we did share information with the public about if we do have to make a change and vary from what's in our manual, we will be very transparent with clarification on that, why we made the change, kind of what was driving that, just so people can understand, here's an update. If we didn't get something updated in the manual in time, we will share that and be up to date about that. COVID testing, we are getting ready to get up and going our weekly COVID testing. We will continue our point of care testing, which is if a student or staff comes to school, starts showing symptoms, we have available rapid testing in our nurse's office and several of our other auxiliary buildings to test individuals who are showing symptoms while on campus. So we'll continue with those. Weekly COVID testing. I get parents, we've gotten some communication, why is this taking so long? Believe me, Dr. Huddleston is working as fast as she can. When you're dealing with government agencies, when you're dealing with a large system the size of ours, it's a lot of pieces to get moving and organized. And she has been doing a phenomenal job organizing that, meeting with the schools, identifying the locations, being the in-between the lab and the schools to make sure everything is organized, as well as the consent form. There are a lot of hoops to jump through with that. Currently, we have about 1,500 students that have been signed up for consent for testing. We really want to try to see that number get up to about 2,500. We know that if you're testing about 50% or more of your students on a weekly basis, that is really the most beneficial. So just putting another plug out there for parents, please review that consent form, sign your student up for weekly test screening so that we can identify any of those asymptomatic students that may be spreading COVID amongst other students within our building or staff members. So we really want to see that number get a little bit higher to make that surveillance testing or that weekly COVID testing as effective as possible. So we are waiting on the supply chain to deliver things. Our plan is to start testing after fall break. And that really will just depend on when the tests get here. I think we are ready to go. We are ready to start the process, but we need the test to arrive. And we keep hearing the supply chain issues as things go on with COVID. And as soon as it gets here, we are ready to go. Okay, vaccines. So we are moving ahead as a school district with requiring vaccines for our employees. Our date for staff to get fully vaccinated is October 31st, or they can complete the exemption process. So if a staff member feels that a vaccine is not the right option for them, they can enter the exemption process, and our Human Resources Department will handle that. If a staff member successfully completes the exemption process, which means they're granted an exemption and don't have to be vaccinated, they will be required to take a rapid COVID test daily. We will offer those tests in our school building for those staff. We'll have the details. We'll share those with our staff coming up, or if that staff member wants to take a rapid test at either a pharmacy or a healthcare facility, they're welcome to do that. But we will not be accepting home COVID tests. They will have to bring in a certified result from either a pharmacy or a healthcare facility. If a staff member does get through the exemption process and has to take the test and they decide to take the rapid COVID test daily at one of our facilities, we will have a cost associated with that. So that is the update for staff. So for students, this is a much bigger issue than for staff. Staff is a much different thing when you're talking about employees that work for your school system versus students that attend your public school system. So we, the board, the superintendent, we all agree that vaccines are the best way to get through this pandemic. However, at this point, the board knows that there are some other obstacles to navigate. There's lots of other things to consider when requiring vaccines for our students in our school buildings. So we are still continuing this conversation and are not ready at this time to take any official action for mandating vaccines for students in our buildings. I will on Friday, every week I share my Friday follow-up. I will be providing some additional information in my Friday follow-up with just some more information about the discussion that the board's been having and the reasonings behind what we've been talking about with the vaccinations for students for COVID. So look forward to my Friday follow-up for some additional information on vaccines. So what we are seeing is we can see some, a little bit of downturn in positive cases in the community, but I can tell you every positive case that shows up in our schools creates a lot of work for our staff to contact trace. It requires students that haven't been vaccinated to be quarantined. So really I'm putting out a clarion call to our community to do all that you can as a community to decrease the spread of COVID. And this is just some reminders of what's on the CDC website. Stay home when you're not feeling well. Keep your child home when they're not feeling well. Continue practicing masking, physical distancing, frequent hand washing. Please avoid crowds and any poorly ventilated areas. Make sure you're cleaning, even in your home, high-touch surfaces. Cover your cough and sneeze. And then also just monitor your health and the health of your child, even if your symptoms are very minor. What we're seeing is people will have a little bit of a scratchy throat, oh, I've got a little bit of a sniffle, maybe a slight headache. People are testing positive that have been vaccinated and their symptoms are lower. And as we heard in some of our public comments, people that have been vaccinated can test positive and can spread the virus. So we definitely want to make sure that whatever you are doing, if you are not feeling well, if you're experiencing any of those symptoms, please get a COVID test. Make sure you get that all clear. Come to school late, whatever you need to do, but we want to make sure that the people coming into our buildings are not COVID positive and are not continuing to spread COVID amongst our staff and students. I did also want to share just my evaluation tool. We finalized, this has been kind of a long-going project, and I'm happy to share that we finalized this tool this evening with the last phase, which was developing the annual goals that I will use. Eston, if you can open up that tool for me. If you want to increase it just a little bit for me, Eston, zoom in. Okay, so it's a pretty lengthy tool. It's first part of it gives a calendar, gives an overview, and I'll be posting a PDF of this on our website for people to review. Go ahead and scroll down, and you'll notice that there are district priorities, and my evaluation is tied to making sure that our school district achieves those priorities. So priorities as related to our vision and mission, priorities related to equitable outcomes for our students, as well as building a positive culture and climate. Another priority area for the school system is making sure our school runs effectively and efficiently, that operations run well, that we are meeting our goals and objectives as it relates to human resources and management. District Priority 5 really deals with leadership accountability. So what am I doing as a leader? How is my executive cabinet functioning? And as a board, how are we functioning together as a board? So that's very important. We know that effective school governance creates effective school systems. And then Priority 6 is communication and community engagement. So that is the last priority. So there's actions and activities that I will be completing to demonstrate my effectiveness or lack of effectiveness in these areas, as well as some ideas of things that I will provide as evidence to the board to show that requirement that I'm meeting where I am on my on these different evaluation points. So if you scroll down a little bit further, so I have developed 4 areas for annual goals. Now, just so people know, student outcomes and achievement, that is related to priority number 2, equitable outcomes for students. So I very much am a student achievement focused person. I want to make sure that our achievement is high as a school district, and I want to make sure that all of our students have equitable opportunities for that high level of success. But I think there are a couple core areas that we need to work on as a district, and these are the goals that I've developed, and they are around making sure our district communications are effective and frequent. We really need to focus on a district about building the foundations for a data culture. So I've included some language there. There's also a link to the kind of the protocol that we're going to use to help develop that foundation. Embedding and implementing our social emotional learning curriculum, and then also enhancing stakeholder engagement opportunities is my 4th goal area. So that will be my evaluation. So I'll get my midterm evaluation completed in November, and then we'll do my final evaluation close to the end of the year. And Essen, if you will scroll down, what I will be sharing publicly is I will share the overall summary report. So at the mid-year, after my evaluation is completed, I will be sharing this sheet on the website so people can follow and see how we are doing as a district and how I'm performing as well. And at the end of the year, there's a final evaluation page, and we'll also share that overall summary publicly as well. So I did just want to, and you can go back to the presentation, Essen, thank you. Part of this survey and part of what I really value as a leader is getting input from stakeholder groups. I want to know, how do the parents, how do the teachers, how do the leaders, how do the students and the principals that I work with perceive my leadership? That's very important to me. I'm very much a growth mindset person, and I want to hear, where am I doing well? What do I need to keep doing? And what are some areas that I may need to work on for my own personal growth so that I can help support our staff and students in the district? So there will be some surveys going out to gather some data on the different areas that are listed in my evaluation. And as I said, I will be sharing publicly the mid-year and the summary sheets when those are completed. So that is my updated evaluation tool. And then for the board, if you looked through our extensive board packet this month, you saw at the end that there is a report, and Principal Lofstrand mentioned this in her presentation as well. I've asked each school to provide a monthly status report for the board. First part of it is data. So how are our students achieving? And I've shared before that we'll be tracking how our students are performing on reading, on math. For high school, we'll also be looking at on track for graduation at the high school and the middle school. Attendance data. Will also be giving an overview of student athletics and activities events, and any upcoming events that the board may want to attend will also be listed there. So just for the board, some of them were a little formatted a little bit differently. So when we get to the chair comments, if the board wants to share kind of how you liked the reports, is there one that kind of stuck out as a better format than some of the other ones? Feel free to let me know so we can make sure that those are in a way that is most digestible for our board and for the public. And then the final piece for the monthly updates, so the public can also follow along, not only with the monthly updates, but we have finalized our framework for equitable outcomes. It is ready to publish, and it will be put on our website as well. So it is just our overview of our pillars and our plan. And then if you scroll down, there's lots of links in there to take you to our ends policies, to show you our coherence framework, so you can see a connection, not just from school improvement plans to the classroom, but this coherence plan connects the boardroom to the classroom. And that's very important, that as the leaders for our school district, we are modeling and showing how we connect our work directly to the students in our classrooms. And Essen, if you scroll all the way down, there's lots of information to digest in there. There are links to every single one of our school improvement plans. So families are welcome and public is welcome to review those, and those will be updated mid-year and again at the end of the year. So that is just some information for the board and for our public. The last thing second to last thing I'm going to share is I am forming our student advisory team for the superintendent, and it's called S2AT, and the applications went out last week. So if students are interested, we are doing 8th grade and above. I will be selecting students that I'll meet with on a monthly basis, because I really believe that the students need to have a voice that is heard at the top level of our district. I want to know, how do our students see what's happening? How do the education we're providing our students, how is that received? Are they getting the outcomes that we hope they are getting? To me, that is one of the most essential voices that need to be lifted in a school district. So I will be meeting with those students monthly. And last slide, Eston, I, over the summer, shared an art contest and got lots of different submissions. I think these are the ones that came in so far. And I said I was going to choose a couple to hang and put in the outer office in the superintendent suite. I have to be honest, I couldn't choose any of them, so I chose all of them. So we are going to frame all of these amazing works of art and put them in the outer office in the superintendent suite. But what I would love is if I will keep reminding people to share their student artwork, and hopefully some of the art teachers in our buildings also use this as a way to get our students to express their artistic side. We will add those as we go throughout the year and just add to that collection. And I'll highlight those at every board meeting once they come in, because they were just so wonderful. And it would just make my whole week when a couple would come in. I'd be like, oh my gosh, so great. So love seeing the artwork, love seeing our students' artistic abilities. They were amazing. So good job, students. And that concludes my comments for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Furman. Now it's time to move on to the chair's report, and I do have a few things I'd love to mention. After I finish my comments, I will allow the other board members to add anything, if there's anything they would also like to mention, and also if they have any feedback regarding the principal reports for you, Dr. Furman, or also we may follow up with you after this meeting if it's something more detailed. But I'd like to start by saying thank you to you, our superintendent, leader, and also to our teachers and staff for your endless work. Your dedication is really appreciated to keeping our kids safe and our schools open and keeping them learning in person. And I appreciate that this is another job on top of your already more than full-time job. And the same is true for our teachers and our staff. And I realize and appreciate that it's exhausting, but it's so important. And I'm extremely grateful as both a parent and a school board member that we have such wonderful people in place doing these jobs. This landscape's ever changing. It takes a lot to stay on top of everything. And also it takes a lot for the teachers and the staff to not only implement but enforce our mitigation strategies. But I hear that the students are doing a really good job. And when I ask my own children, you know, are the kids doing it? They say yes, they're doing it, and they're seeing that kids are being supportive and mindful of these mitigation strategies, and I think that's great. We're also excited to be adding another mitigation layer, including the surveillance testing, which is going to be rolled out very soon. And I also want to say that I appreciate the community very much for trusting us with their children and for all of your support and ongoing support of CSD during this time. It means a lot. This community is amazing. There are a lot of resources in this community, a lot of people who give a lot of their good energy every single day to our schools and to support our teachers and to our children. And so thank you very much to our community. One thing that was really fun this week, we as board members received many emails from 8th graders who had been given an assignment to advocate for something that mattered to them and to voice their concerns to people who could do something about it. And so we heard from many 8th graders, and I really appreciated hearing their voices and hearing about some really important topics, some of them very serious. And I just want to shout out those 8th graders and encourage them to continue to make their voices be heard. Something exciting has happened here on the courtyard outside of the Wilson Center. There's a new statue entitled What Sonia Said by Alex Slavani. and it was unveiled on September 12th in the courtyard here at the Wilson Center. The Art for People installation was organized by the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights, and it's the first public art indicator specifically commissioned and designed to actively change oppressive and racist narratives. Board member Dana Johnson-Davis spoke at the event. Thank you. And it was, it's really beautiful, and I hope everyone, if you haven't seen it yet, take a look and take a moment to see this statue and learn what it represents. Also, this past month, Beacon Hill presented the first Pan-African Festival. It was an inspiring event with the theme of innovation, culture, and economic empowerment through music, dance, and spoken words. And I hope it becomes more than just a one-time thing. I would love to see that become an annual event. We are also celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, which begins September 15th. And there will be a series here in Decatur of many events of Hispanic Latinx culture, food, and music, dance, art, and education. Many examples of the valuable contributions Hispanic Americans have made to our country. So that should be a lot of fun. I look forward to attending that event as well. September is National Suicide Prevention Month. CSD is committed to the emotional well-being of our students and the vital mission of suicide prevention. We encourage parents and students to reach out to your school counselors and just know that they are there for you, your teachers as well, and also to ask for the support if it's needed. And we want to also encourage students, if you have high school students, mention to them that the Decatur Student Center is there. It's there for them, and not to be shy about going there. Make sure they know that it's okay. It's an excused absence. It's there for them when they just need a minute. And it's a beautiful space. It's a partnership with the Decatur Education Foundation. And it's more than just a space. There's support there. There are people to talk to, and they can also get some counseling services if they need it there, or they can just go there if they just need to breathe. So encourage your students to make use of that. It's wonderful. And we look forward to expanding this initiative to Renfro as well in the future. On a lighter note, it's Homecoming Spirit Week at CSD. And this is especially exciting for the students who didn't get to experience it last year. So it's been a couple years since we've had the joy of doing this. And so we hope that you'll participate. There's going to be a parade this Friday at 5:30. And then there's going to be a football game kickoff at 7:30. And we hope to see you there. We hope to see you there wearing a mask and being mindful also of the CDC safety guidelines. It's exciting, especially because our football team is 3-0, and it's ranked number 10 in Class 5A in the state. And this is the first time since 2004 that they've been ranked, and so that's pretty cool. And we're also really proud of our coach. He's been Coach Felton. He has been nominated for the Atlanta Falcons Coach of the Week. So if you have an opportunity to vote for him, you can vote once every hour until sometime on Wednesday. And that would just be really fun if he could get recognized during homecoming week. I just want to say I'm so proud of all of our student athletes for being great athletes and also for being dedicated students. It's a tricky balance, and I think, I just really admire and appreciate our student athletes. And a lot of this couldn't be possible without our parents. Again, I look back at our community and want to thank the dedicated parent volunteers who run the Bulldog Boosters Club, the PTAs and PTOs. They put together really fun events, and it just, we were hearing from Principal Lofstrand about building positive culture, and our parents and their support for the PTAs and PTOs and the Bulldog Boosters does so much to build that positive climate and culture at the school. And we are really fortunate as a community to have that, because not all communities have it to the extent that we do. And so that's something I want to thank the community for. The DHS cross-country team is hosting their 5K race on the trails at Legacy Park, which, as you probably know, that's the 77-acre acquisition that was made by the city of Decatur only a couple of years ago. And so that's pretty neat that we are able to collaboratively use that space. And this will be a fundraiser for the cross-country team, so hope to see you there. Finally, I'd like to also reiterate, we're grateful for the resources and support that the Decatur Education Foundation provides to our district and the community, and that includes, many things, a broad range of topics. They're often the first to jump in and identify a need. And that includes homework help, mentoring, tutoring, even food insecurity over the past year. And what they often do is because they are nimble, they're able to identify that need quickly, react to it, and then connect those people with other organizations that can sustain that service to them long term. But they often fill the gaps. They support our teachers in ways that we can't always do from the system budget point of view. And so it's really wonderful to have them as partners. So thank you for listening, but there are just so many good things to say about our district. Now I'd like to give the rest of the board an opportunity if there are any other comments you would like to make.
I thought the school reports were great. Everyone basically followed the same format. Some just had more information to share than others. I really even appreciated the coming events that DHS and Renfro shared, because it has the games listed right there. So it's, you know, a nice place to just go and quickly look to reference for the games of the next month. And so I thought, you know, the reports were very informative, and the information that was provided is very relevant.
I like the way, I agree. Excellent, great data. Oakhurst put the final number next to the percentage for a lot of their stuff, which is something you and I've talked about. When you see something like 5% of a school is doing something, and then the data says that's 2 kids.
Right.
We can read that very differently. And then it showed up the same way in the counseling numbers, which stood out to me. I appreciated that a lot of the counselors responded with hard numbers. They said, we heard from 40 students at Claremont who reached out to counselors for one-on-one. Just as we hear that through the year, prioritizing counseling and mental health and reaching out, I think becomes a little, it's numbers in our city. So, and speaks to, Heather, I think you were pointing out the 8th graders who reached out, a number of them spoke about suicide prevention in this month and dealing with mental health. And so it's definitely been on my mind.
I was glad that you mentioned the 8th graders' letters. And if any of the 8th graders are listening, I fully intend to respond to these many emails. And I have sat down again, but it takes some time, as the kids will attest, given the obvious amount of effort they put into the letters, which were really quite impressive, and their advocacy for the various things that they picked. And so I was very impressed by them. I'm very happy. It was a great assignment. It's also going to take me a little bit of time to respond. So I don't want to be a bad example of unresponsive, government by not answering. So the answers are coming, but I just wanted to say thank you for the emails. So far, I agree with all of them. Sometimes issues are difficult, so anyway, thank you for the letter.
I just have one final comment about the principal's report. I enjoyed all of them. I like the insight into the school. I do wonder if there's any way to make them even more standardized or take certain components and build sort of a dashboard around it, but I also don't want to put too much work on you to do that, but maybe if there's a way to digest that a little more. And the one thing that in this past report I think would be very helpful is to not only see the current map scores and percentages of achievement in the various levels, but also compare that to 2 years ago so that it can be given, we can be given the perspective and understand the delta. Is that better or worse than we've been faring in years past?
Yeah, thank you. And that is going to be a big part of that delta and kind of growth over time. That will be a big part of the data that we share next month when we take a deep dive into the accelerating student learning pillar.
Okay.
I might make one additional comment. I appreciated that you shared the evaluation tool. We've of course always had an evaluation tool. I don't know that we've always talked about it so publicly. But one of the things you put in it that I'm very excited to see is the emphasis on surveys, and so that we're reaching out to the people who need to be asked rather than to evaluate how you're doing. And it's something that we've been really trying to get done ever since I've been on the board. And it's been a complicated issue for a lot of reasons. But I appreciate that you've embraced it. And, I mean, we've been moving in this direction for a couple of years and laying the groundwork, but I appreciate that we're there. Because I think it's important, and I think, students, staff, parents, so that we can really get a good understanding of how people are affected.
I take the job very seriously and need to hear from the people that receive the work and make sure that I'm hitting the targets that they need to see and want to see hit. So, yeah, it's important to me. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to consent items. We have a list here including personnel reports, school nutrition, financial reports, approve the purchase of equipment and service contract for secondary one-to-one devices, samples foods, grocery bid contract school nutrition for fiscal year 22, U.S. Foods grocery bid contract school nutrition for fiscal year 22, and an RFQB 21005, the system-wide kitchen equipment replacement item. Do I have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And finally, we are moving forward to the items for action, information, or discussion. And the first item is to approve the 2022-2023 school calendar.
I think everyone's had it attached. Any questions before the board may approve it?
Did my one comment get incorporated?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, good, thank you. I'm having trouble.
You're welcome. I appreciate your
I'm used
attention
to a
to
touch
detail.
screen.
Oh, yeah.
All right, okay, so I guess, may I have a motion, please, to approve the calendar for the 2022-2023 school year?
I move to approve the calendar for the 2022-2023 school year.
In a second?
A second.
Great. Okay, the next item for this. Oh, sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Thank you, Louis. And the next item is the monitoring report for discussion.
Yeah, so 2 monitoring reports up this month. So I know it's a lot this month, but we have these 2 ready to go. First one up is our human resources monitoring report. So board members, in your packet, you had EL, and I've kind of done a naming convention. So it's an executive limitation. I'm calling those EL policy number and then whatever is in the policy. 2.6, this one is staff. So the process to go through here is the first phase of this is to make sure that I have reasonably interpreted the board's policy for what was written in our policy. So then what we'll do is once you believe I have reasonably interpreted the policy, we will check off on the first page of the report that yes, I've reasonably interpreted it. And then the second phase is that you will also check off on the second page for board action that it has been either reasonably interpreted or not reasonably interpreted. And then we dig into the policy. So what I'm interested in is, as the board has read through this, are there any areas in the human resources or in the staff policy that I have not reasonably interpreted so that I can make those changes and bring this back to the board? And then I also listed on the report is compliance. So what will it look like if the school district or if I have ensured compliance of the report or of the policy, and then the evidence and the data that will be provided to ensure compliance. So that is, I don't know what page in the packet page. I think it starts in the early 100s.
Page 77.
Go through that.
That's the report.
Yeah, that's the actual report. Go to the actual policy. There you go. Yep. So if you have any clarifications or things that you think I need to review and take back to the drawing board with interpretation of the policy. So if you look at the format, I've just copied and pasted the actual policy in the top, and then I have my interpretation. Then I've got the section for compliance, and then I've listed evidence and data. And then once this is officially approved as interpreted reasonably, I will bring back, we'll set a date for when I will bring it back with the actual data linked and my take on if it's compliant or not, and then the board will review and determine if that complies or not. So, any questions on the staff?
I did have one question, and it was,
about the nation.
Yeah. It was, I was curious why it says, that we, let me go to that page, it's on board packet, page 108. That's page 10 in the report.
Yeah, and it's in the table that lists the evidence, the data, and it's actually one of the administrative regulations. So I got really excited when I finished going through the policy and then realized I also had to interpret the ARs as well. So I was like, all right, here, keep going, Maggie. So the policy, the report says that our staff demographics will reflect diversity. And I'll be 100% honest, I put the nation in there because that's what the previous superintendent kept telling us as a cabinet. So if that's something we want to look at metro area, or if we want to look at, I can update that one.
Okay.
That caught my eye too. And my thought, and I'm drawing, there's the book, The Color of Law, this book?
No.
Richard Rothstein, it's an outstanding book. But he makes a recommendation in it. And the point is that you don't want to use local demographics as you might do, because as Decatur leaches out, you've warped your statistics and you've got the wrong model. But what he recommends, and he's really talking in that book about diversity in housing and this sort of thing, is that you use the metropolitan statistical area as the basis, because it's broad enough, it's not warped by local irregularities, but it's small enough so that it's relevant to the locality. Right? So it'd be, I don't know what the metropolitan statistical area is. It's like a 16 or 22 county area, so it would be quite broad, and it would include. So that's what I would suggest, and I've always thought that it was a very smart recommendation that we might use.
How's the rest of the board feel about that? Okay.
Can you just clarify what the negative to using the district-specific data is?
Well, if we've lost, if we're losing our diversity in the city of Decatur, we don't want our goal to be to match that. Instead, we want the goals to be a little bit more unaffected by that kind of imbalance. I'm just trying to pick my words real carefully, but I think it's obvious what I'm trying to say.
I think it makes sense to use the demographic comparison to what our target areas are for recruiting. So if we hold our career fairs around the Metro Atlanta area, I think that would make sense to reflect the Metro Atlanta area.
Okay.
I have a more general comment, which is that at the last board meeting, I talked a lot about the importance, and I understand from others that I might have been misunderstood. I want to make clear what I was intending to say in terms of the board, what we call board work. And I think that this is board work. And what I was emphasizing is the need to get a report exactly like you presented, which I think is really good and fulfills that need. It's this report that identifies how you interpret our policies and how you are progressing to meet them, how you're meeting them, that it has been absent for the past really year and a half. And so this is exactly what I'm asking for. I very much appreciate what I see here, because this is what I think we need to be doing. It's just on a regular cycle, but I think this is well done, and I appreciate it.
Good, yeah. I have to give kudos to Adina and her team. Once we finish the policy piece, she'll answer any questions you have about the actual human resource annual report.
I have two other requests. One is that as part of the format when we do it, I would appreciate actually having, because I like to read these things in hard copy because we know that I have some challenge. when there are links to things like the administrative regulations,
yes.
I'm not gonna go follow them.
Sure.
And so I'd like to have those printed out.
Okay.
That's number one. Number two, I appreciated that your metric or your evaluation for whether or not those two employee grievance and employee protection regulations kind of fit the bill is to go out and survey the teachers, the employees, and find out if they do. Because, and, you know, if the employees are satisfied, then I'm satisfied, but that's exactly what we need to do. And that's what you committed to doing.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Any other questions from other board members about the interpretation or the evidence for employee 2.6?
Me.
Good. All right, so Ms. Walker also included in the packet the annual staff so here's what we need to do, sorry. So we have been doing the annual report and kind of monitoring of staff 2.6 policies in September. Speaking with Ms. Walker, as she's been preparing the report, this is a really, really busy time for human resources. So I was going to recommend that we move policy monitoring for 2.6 to January. Was that what we were talking about, Adina? Okay. Because that's a better time for her and her department to really do all the work. It's a lot of work to pull all the data and do that presentation. So if you're okay, we will bring this back for actual monitoring in December.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, January.
Yeah, I'm fine with timing these however it makes most sense for us to function well, because I also appreciate that we have been wanting to start recruiting sooner and sooner, and the earlier we recruit, it seems like the more competitive pool of candidates we get. And so last year we actually even started recruiting, didn't we, in January? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's fantastic. And so tell us when the timing is best, and then we can work together to make that calendar.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What works for us is January.
Okay.
So we'll do January then. Okay, awesome. Okay, so the last part of this is the annual report. Were there any questions for Ms. Walker and her team as it relates to the actual annual report that was included in there as well? And I just want to give her, Adina a shout out. First of all, she revamped our entire employee handbook. It was, I'm just going to say it, it was kind of a disaster. She revamped it, she reorganized it, she updated it. It is now an actual usable employee handbook, which I think has the valuable information our staff has been needing. So I want to give her and her team big kudos for that, as well as the rest of the executive cabinet, because they had lots of parts to contribute to that big document as well. So thank you, Adina and executive cabinet and your team. You guys did a really excellent job with getting that employee handbook together. And then Adina's team worked diligently, lots of long hours getting the annual report ready. So any questions you have for her and her team, we're ready to answer those.
I had a question. So I saw where there was a page about the job fair, and there were 100, I think, candidates who were interviewed. I was wondering how many new hires came out of that job fair, and I don't know if you have that information right now at your fingertips, but I was curious as to, you know, what we were able to get from that job fair.
Actually, for the job fair, we had over 100 applicants. And so of those 100 applicants, we had maybe 40 that actually came out of the job fair.
40 new hires?
40 new
Okay.
hires.
Okay, thank you.
Or just comment that I really appreciated the annual report, and I don't remember seeing that kind of a report before. And maybe it's been done, and I don't remember it, but I appreciated it, and it was very well done.
I was also curious, I think it was in this report where the affinity groups were mentioned, or is that later, the equity pillars report?
Could be in both of them.
Okay, I was wondering, are the affinity groups, are they up and running now?
Yeah, that one of our staff members, Dr. John Minnis, one of the leaders of the last note. And so I believe we just had a meeting last week.
Okay.
So we have to go to
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, well, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the equity
I had submitted just some administrative things.
Yes.
Did those get corrected?
Yes,
Okay.
we got 'em.
Yeah,
Thank
I think
you.
it was a very good report. I was very interested, and I'm really excited about a couple of things in there. Just, I think that it's really exciting that we're doing a 30, 60, 90 check-in with new hires, because the onboarding process is so important. I also really like that we're finding pathways for the classified staff to get their teacher certification, because I love that we're being able to grow people from within and give people opportunities and reasons to come to our district. I also really like the student-teacher placement, and that seems to also have helped us grow and groom people from, kind of from within, because they got their first experience teaching here. I also like that we have the new hire mentors, so thank you for implementing that. And also, I really like that we're doing the new hire feedbacks, but also the departure surveys. So as we see people leave, I'm also very appreciative that we're figuring out why they left, so that we can figure out ways to have even better staff retention. So there were a lot of things that stood out in this report, but those were just a few. So thank you for those.
You can see that they are very busy in human resources.
Yes.
And Adina has stepped up and done a really great job as the Chief Human Resource Officer for our district.
Thank you.
87 is the number of new hires? Was that statistically high, low? Is that about right?
That's pretty on par with what our hires should be.
Okay.
We actually thought it would be still greater with the continuation of the pandemic and all that, but it was super on par of how we would staff our new hires.
Okay.
Staff our new hires.
Because that includes people who left and we're replacing, that's a new hire. Okay.
Are we continuing to plan to do a job fair and start that recruiting in January again?
Absolutely. Right now, I wanted to just make sure with the metro area that we're not competing on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the feedback from our principals and this committee, admin team that helped, with the interviews for that event, appreciated the weekday and the weekend day.
Okay.
So right now, we have tentative date of February 23rd and the 26th, and that's Saturday. We have our winter break right there the week before, so we don't want to conflict with that. So, yeah, right now, we already have our tentative date.
Okay, that's great. And I would also just ask that you let us and the superintendent know what we need to do for you to make that happen, because obviously there needs to be budget, there needs to be positions identified, and all of those things first. And so I know we need to do our work early to allow you to do your work early. So please let us know what we can do to make that happen.
And even if we do move to more in-person, I think keeping a virtual piece of that kind of reaches our reach a little bit, broad. And we had applicants from all over the country, so it was very interesting to have that access, keeping up for a virtual job fair.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we will move on to the equity monitoring report and presentation. Mary, I'm going to make sure they're good on the policy, and then we'll have you come on up. So you get a rest just for cool your heels for just a second more. Okay, so Heather had submitted a question on the equity report, and it was the interpretation for the section of the policy that said opportunities that, meaning students would pursue within and beyond our school system. And I had interpreted that to mean as programs such as whether they're in our IBDP program, career, they're going to a four-year college, a technical college, if they're moving straight into the workforce or military. And Heather had submitted a question about also including extracurriculars in that section as well. So just curious on the rest of the board's interpretation of that, and if that's something we need to add.
I'm sorry, but can you down here?
Yes, page. It is page 116. And it's the last,
opportunity.
Yep. I definitely could see when it says within our school system, that would be extracurriculars, that would be sports and clubs. I kept it with more of the academic kind of instructional programs and not as much thinking the extracurricular, but I definitely could see how that would be an addition there.
You can think of obvious instances when that would be inappropriate. For instance, participation in an affinity group. I mean, I guess I'm wondering if it's right, obvious that those things would predict participation in affinity groups. I just wonder if it's too broad a brush.
I think my intent was that I would like to have some, I guess, intention to see to it that all groups are invited, encouraged, feel welcome, represented in extracurricular activities as a whole. And we maybe don't need to drill down to each individual group or each individual club to see. I mean, that's up for discussion, but my overall feeling was that I think it's important that all of our students are encouraged to participate and that we do see representation from all of our subgroups, because it is an extension of the school. It's really important for socializing, for social emotional outlets and support, and just even for academic enrichment. Like a lot of our clubs, like debate club or math bowl or whatever, Greek club, they can be also an extension of learning and the part that makes it fun. And not only that, but I also think it's a great opportunity for kids to kind of mingle in different ways than they do in their regular classes. And so, some kids who may not have classes together will meet who wouldn't otherwise meet. And so it maybe doesn't need to be too rigid, but maybe there could be some mention of just, having a finger on the pulse of that and being mindful of it and making sure that we are doing the kind of outreach we should be doing to at least reach out to all groups and extend the invitation. That was my thinking.
That's the benefit of that.
Mm-hmm.
Extracurriculars in general.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is something I didn't really think about, but glad that you brought that up. I'll add that in there. Okay. Any other questions or clarifications on the equity monitoring interpretation?
I only took I think the tripod survey one time before the classroom. So I was just trying to remember, what are the categories that come out of that survey that we would be comparing the data?
Yeah, it's caring, challenge, it's all these C words. That's why it's called the 7C. It's like the flower report.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
For point 6, under compliance, do we keep up with data on the post-secondary and other, achievement of our students? Is that correct?
We do. We keep information, and it comes back to us through when the state does our CCRPI report about where students end up.
Not just where they end up, but how they succeed with where they end up?
Now, that we have to check on that one.
Okay.
I don't know about success rates. Do they continue after their first year? We do get data in our CCRPI report about, do they continue to be enrolled as a student in a 4-year college or a technical college? But how do they measure success? That's a little more difficult to capture.
For schools and school districts before, like how certain schools stack up for preparing people. Because it's one thing to get into the place where you want to. It's another thing to have a success rate beyond that. It may actually be the housing authority that keeps up with that level of data for their population that has been shared with them before.
They do.
But I think I've seen it for schools as well, and I would love to see that. I mean, obviously, that's a multi-year thing, but I'll second that. I've always thought that would be good, and it seems like the kind of thing on the college end of it, which is only one end, but that you could get lots of information just from UGA admissions count, go to the colleges around town and get a good pool and ask them how we're doing. They keep data on that.
They do, yeah, and this is one of those things where when you look at overall program evaluation, how successful are your graduates, leadership academies at the college level try to track this and measure this, and it's, once people leave your institution, they're gone. Can you get the data back? Can you not? So it gets a little more squiggly once they leave. We can try to gather as much of it as we can.
Okay. Let me look up, I think that I know a few.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I think that definitely would enhance that report to see how our students do after they leave us. Okay, any other questions on this one? Okay, so if the board thinks that is, with those two corrections, that's a reasonable interpretation, we will do this report in August. And it's gonna kind of one of those lagging ones. So next August, we'll have all the data and interpretations of how we did this year. Okay, all right, so Dr. Banks, we're ready for your amazing presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be able to share with you, which is why we're topping up. Okay. So for those of you who've seen the presentation by me before, you know that I like to bring a little of my culture into every presentation. So this presentation will be a little bit interactive. And I'm asking if you are willing to help me with that. Yes? Yes. Are you willing? Okay, awesome. I'll tell you all more about that in a moment. Michelle Alexander wrote the quote that you see here on this slide to indicate our responsibility to fight against racial injustice. And her statement is also relevant to our fight against racial injustice here in City Schools of Decatur. And that is the racial injustice that is so evident in our disproportionately negative outcome for Black students. As Michelle Alexander says, something more is required. This is why CSD has chosen to make advancing racial equity a prominent part of who we are and what we do. The equity part of the Equity and Student Services Department helps to support CSD's framework through what we call the Advancing Racial Equity pillar. You see it over there on the left. However, I want to take a moment to stress that when work is done with fidelity and done by people who believe in it, the work becomes practically seamless. So I can't take responsibility for all of the work in our department. Everything in the pillar happens because of the unwavering support of my boss, Dr. Huddleston. Also, the unwavering support of our school principals, who have been phenomenal in supporting this equity work, curriculum and instruction, staff support in the federal programs department, our teachers, and I'll tell you more about the work that they do in a moment, and members of our community who are always reaching out to support this work. Our PTAs have even taken part by establishing DEI committees, and they are doing equity work for other parents to try to bring parents along with their students. In a time when our country is so divided and experiencing so much turmoil and strife, it is encouraging to see that so many of us know that something different is required of us and that we are willing to act. I will share a little piece of my culture now through these video clips. It's relevant to what I will ask you to do later. To move forward, this is the priority statement that guides the Advancing Racial Equity pillar. It requires active work against racism, each student getting what they need to be successful, and addressing and eliminating disproportionately negative outcomes. And the most pivotal point in this priority statement, in all the work we are doing in this pillar, is about paying our educational debt to Black students. Now comes the interactive part. Don't forget, you all agree to help. Whenever I raise my fist and you see these clapping hand symbols, we are all going to emphasize the point by implementing the double hand clap on syllables that goes with this text. So it'll look like A, B, because that's what we need to do. So let's practice. Let me make it go away. All right, so I will again raise my hand. I will then show the clapping hand symbols, and we all say, all right, thank you very much. Now, don't forget, if you're really gonna honor my culture, you gotta say it like you mean it. Okay, we're not just paying the debt, we're paying the debt. Okay. You may have heard of the Equity Action Plan. We talked about that several times here. And I want to clarify that it is one and the same with the Advancing Racial Equity pillar. And the goals are the same: creating an anti-racist, equitable environment while paying our debt so all students can thrive. To achieve these goals, we are implementing 3 critical initiatives. Normalize involves everyone being on the same page, developing cultural humility, and developing a shared organizational understanding of key concepts related to racial equity. Organize involves building our capacity as an organization to learn the skills and competencies that will prepare all CSD educators to engage culturally responsive educator practices and curriculum. Operationalize involves revising, increasing, and ensuring the implementation of equitable district-wide policy. I'm going to present information regarding all 3 of these initiatives. And for each one, I'm going to tell you what's being done in the area, why it's being done, where we are with it right now, and how it's going. So we'll start with normalize. Since we say that this normalized initiative is about cultural humility, I just want to take a moment to define that. Cultural humility turns our gaze inward on developing our self-humility and a genuine interest in others. In order to practice cultural humility, a person must also be aware of and sensitive to historic realities, like legacies of violence against certain groups of people, and be knowledgeable about key concepts related to racial equity, like anti-racism, implicit bias, and systemic racism. The highlighted portion of the Roxane Gay quote on this slide illustrates this mindset. In other words, we gotta know that we ain't perfect, we gotta clean up our own backyard, and then maybe we can start talking about others, but not until we take care of ourselves. Within the Normalize initiative, CSD has done and is doing a lot of strong work. Because our time is limited, I will only highlight a small portion of the work we do, but if you want to know more, don't hesitate to ask. Like Steve Rogers says, I can do this all day. Let's start with district professional learning. In addition to the work that you all know we're already doing with Courageous Conversations About Race, a lot of our professional learning comes through our equity teams, or E-teams, who help us normalize by facilitating the execution of the Advancing Racial Equity pillar in individual schools and at the Wilson Center. Each of the 10 schools in CSD and the Wilson Center has an equity team. Team members are teachers and administrators who have volunteered to serve with and are connected to each other through their desire to eliminate systemic racism towards students of color, while inspiring equitable outcomes for all students. I cannot say enough about the work that the equity teams have done and the wonderful contributions that they make. There's only one of me, but they take that work and spread it out exponentially throughout the district, and they are really committed to it. Often when you see a presentation to the board, a school spotlight, it is directly connected to work from the equity committee. So just wanted to take a moment to shout them out because they really are awesome. We are using E-teams because research shows us that peer-to-peer instruction is one of the high leverage practices that move instruction. This work also helps teachers to understand and combat systemic inequities such as disproportionality. District-wide racial affinity groups. Affinity groups can take a lot of forms: veterans groups, faith groups, LGBT plus groups, disability groups, to name a few. But they are often the most powerful when they are focused on creating a diverse and inclusive workplace. Since CSD has put our focus toward racial equity, we offer racial affinity groups for those who wish to engage in conversation about and or explore their personal development journey toward racial justice with others who share their racial identity. We have a white racial affinity group, a Black female racial affinity group, a Black male racial affinity group, an administrators of color racial affinity group, and I just got great news today from one of our AAPI teachers that we will now have an AAPI racial affinity group, so that's really exciting. We are implementing racial affinity groups because the research indicates that they promote staff retention and satisfaction. Happy teachers make happy students. We all know this. We also have student anti-racism groups that have developed at DHS and RMS. The first group to develop was SOAR, Students Organized for Anti-Racism. This was a group that was sponsored and guided by Courageous Conversations About Race. Very quickly, as Decatur students are wont to do, students grew into a place where they said, we want more, we want to do more, we want to do this differently. So they themselves formed the group STAR, Students Talk About Race. Also, starting this semester in the middle school, due to student request, we will be beginning a student organization there called SLAM, Student Leaders Anti-Racist Movement. SLAM participants deepen their personal racial understanding and ability to communicate effectively about race as they develop skills and tools to disrupt systemic racism. A final student group is AAPI Sidekicks. This is headed by Beth Lewis and her DHS Asian Culture Club students. It's also supported by Ms. Diane Andre and Dr. Jones. This group is planning to partner with elementary schools to mentor AAPI students and support them through any COVID-19 related harassment. C-Equity. If CSD is to be a system truly committed to equity, the time for learning and change is now. In C-Equity, students are S, scholars, students in grades 6 through 12, E, who are examining, that is, reflecting on their own understandings about race, E, and who are engaging equity, learning and using skills to interrupt racism such as bystander intervention, eliminating cyber hate, and identifying microaggressions. We work to support these student groups because being able to engage in cross-cultural communication and being culturally competent prepares students to be part of the global community. And, to be honest, because we are all aware of specific student incidents that indicate that such conversations are long overdue. Having said all of this, however, the primary reason for all of this normalizing work is to
Pay.
Thank you. Yes, say today. Get down. Y'all are getting it. Now, where are we with these things and how are they going? As far as courageous conversation, professional development, 92.5% of our certified teachers have been trained. Classified staff and new hires are being trained this month and again in February. As far as E-teams are concerned, again, one of the strongest parts of the work, they volunteer their own time to provide and support professional development. They review and discuss district data related to equity. They educate students and they support caretakers. E-team leaders have almost 24/7 access to me for support. And this year, E-teams will have specialized training from CCAR to help them better deliver to their peers professional learning regarding race. As far as C-Equity is concerned, COVID was a factor slowing down our implementation of C-Equity because we expected to implement the entire thing last year. As a result, we split it up. See Equity Part 1 included 3 sessions during Wellness Wednesdays in 2020. Part 2, lessons 4 through 9, will take place this year in 6th through 12th grade advisement classes. To determine the influence of the Normalized Initiative on teachers' self-efficacy regarding equity-related issues, we implemented a survey, which had really exciting results. More about that in a moment. As I mentioned earlier, I don't have enough time to go deeply into everything we do, but I want to stress just a few things in the normalized area. When it comes to equity professional learning under normalized, there are multiple initiatives. The ones that you see on this slide, that's not even all of them. Teachers, staff, principals, other administrators, and cabinet members all participate in developing cultural humility and this type of professional learning. They all realize that developing cultural humility is a marathon and not a sprint. Our superintendent is even doing an independent study and posting her growth on the equity website for all to see. And did I mention that we have continued to do all of this equity work even in the midst of a global pandemic? Did I mention that? And it's making a difference. At least that's what people say, and that's what our research says. While admittedly, progress on the ultimate goal of disproportionality has yet to manifest, laying this groundwork is part of moving the needle in many ways. And another analysis of our survey shows that overall, teachers' confidence in their ability to talk and teach about equity has grown considerably from when the district started our equity work. Survey participants were asked to record how frequently they, A, examine themselves to identify bias, whiteness, and/or microaggressions in which they engage, how frequently they challenge students when they express a racial stereotype, and how frequently they challenge peers and administrators when they express a racial stereotype. Overall, respondents reported examining themselves as well as challenging others more frequently now than they did at the start of the equity work. The results presented in Table 10 indicate that these differences in the frequency of behavior are in fact statistically significant. Teachers were also asked to compare the current extent to which they decolonize content and reflect upon the role they play in disproportionate outcomes for Black students. As seen in Figure 6 and Table 11, teachers currently engage in most of these practices more frequently than they report to have done so 2 years ago. And these results, too, are statistically significant. We learned a lot more through this survey, both positive and negative. If you'd like me to, I'll come back another time and tell you all about it. Our next key initiative is organize. People often say to me, yeah, all this cultural humility stuff, yeah, that's real good, but when will teachers do something in the classroom to address equity? A valid question. This is where culturally responsive education comes in. But it's not just the job of teachers. Culturally responsive education is called education and not teaching because it includes all of us, everyone involved, from the tiniest student to the head of the district, even you, because we are all educators in one way or another. For the organized initiative, we will do our deeper dive first as we look at the culturally responsive education framework that CSD teachers will learn and use to address equity in the classroom, as well as the suspension prevention program. Seminal researchers in the field of education who address issues of culture associated with several related terms. Perhaps you've heard of terms like multicultural education, transformative education, teaching for social justice, Afrocentric education, and democratic education. Ideas from many of these constructs coalesce, creating culturally responsive education, or CRE. CRE also includes aspects of definitions provided by seminal educational researchers like Geneva Gay, Uri Ladson-Billings, Bell Hooks, James Banks, Sleater, Hilliard, and Nieto, among others. Their contributions to culturally responsive education involve the characteristics that you see here. CRE as a practice addresses the imbalance of our current school culture, which caters to the needs of the dominant cultural group. The goals of CRE is to provide a bridge initiated by educators to students' homes and lives so that students are able to thrive in the school environment and feel as if it's a place of belonging. It's a big topic. So to help make it digestible and, more importantly, actionable, we created what we are calling the Culturally Responsive Education Do For Framework. Let's get into the framework just a tiny bit. It is in your packet. The Do For framework is heavily research-based, but don't take my word for it. Read the bibliography in your packet. And for others who may be interested in the research supporting the Do For framework, it is also posted on the Equity website. The framework has 4 quadrants, and each is further explained by discussing 4 things culturally responsive educators choose to do to be anti-racist, abolitionist, just great teachers as a whole. Quadrant 1 is called Do For Self. It's about developing personal racial ID, cultural humility, and eliminating deficit perspectives. Quad 2 is called Do For Students. Here, teachers address an equitable school or classroom policy and help students by scaffolding to build their intellectual capacity. Section 3, Curriculum and Assessment. Here, teachers address bias in curriculum by engaging the current events and challenges of society, and they also address assessment by aligning grading practices with standards and implementing other concepts that address bias in evaluation. And finally is Do For Instruction. This addresses teacher pedagogy through encouraging warm demanding and the interruption of inequitable instructional practices. It's a pretty good framework, even if I do say so myself. However, let me emphasize for you now, we will not see the changes in educational outcomes that we want. We will not pay the debt until we are on the ground helping educators do the work. If they knew better, they'd already be doing better. So they need some assistance. They don't need to just be introduced to this framework. Many will need extensive professional learning and active coaching to make this work part of who they are. And we have to do that intentional work if we wish to see substantive change. So suspension is a widely used disciplinary technique in both general and special ed. Research has raised serious questions about its effects. Frequent use of suspension has many undesirable outcomes: lower academic achievement, higher levels of disruptive behavior, and higher school dropout rates. Particularly troubling is the disproportionate imposition of school suspension on Black students. National and state data reveal that Black students are 3 to 4 times more likely to be suspended for school misconduct than our white students. Research also shows that racial disparities in school discipline cannot be explained by higher rates of misbehavior among Black students. In multiple studies, white students displayed a higher rate of misbehavior than Black students, yet Black students' misbehavior was more likely to be punished. Overuse of suspension is a problem individual schools and districts can address by replacing immediate suspension with alternatives backed by research, much like CSD's commitment to restorative practices. When implemented with fidelity, the results can be dramatically positive, both for the students and the school. Therefore, this office, in collaboration with others, is developing a data-driven program of restorative practices in lieu of suspension, in which exclusion from school is not a default response to most student behavior. This program is called suspension prevention. And you see here on the slide, just to tailor to schools, an example of a school using restorative practices versus a school that does not. Now, having done a deep dive into the organized initiative, let's just look at the overall summary of the organized initiative. We are using the Do For framework because we believe it will improve academic outcomes for Black students. We are implementing suspension prevention because we believe it will improve discipline disparities for Black students. And of course, we are doing all of this to pay the debt. Pay the debt. Thank you very much. So where are we with these things? With culturally relevant education, the framework has been created. 5 out of 11 introduction trainings are complete, others have been scheduled. There are deep dive trainings for administrators and coaches that begin next week. Ten educational scholars reviewed the CRE framework and provided feedback. The framework was adjusted based upon that conversation. The initial training seemed very positive. Teachers have given good response to it. And we're hoping that the same thing will happen with the administrator and coach training. With suspension prevention, however, we are just starting the work. It is still in planning stage. We have a charter, and we will have our first meeting next week. Within the operationalized initiative, CSD has done and is doing a lot of work that has resulted in several substantive policy changes that you're already familiar with, like the Code of Conduct. Like the other initiatives, I'm going to tell you some of what's currently being done in the area, why it's being done, where we are with it now, and how it's going. CSD uses a protocol in order to facilitate the implementation of equitable policy across the district through the use of a tool called the Racial Equity Tool. You have it in your packet. And I challenge the board to start using the Racial Equity Tool consistently to guide your policy decisions. It's a tool with a series of questions that you answer as you are making policy to ensure that the policy is equitable. We have also begun to use a protocol to facilitate equitable hiring practices. You have a copy of that in your packet as well. Initial reports from the use of the equitable hiring tool from principals, the reports have been extremely positive. And we have seen, actually, I believe, I can't quote that, but I think we've seen an increase in diverse hires across our district. Hiring managers say that they believe it makes a difference, and they believe the questions are relevant and really help them think through what they're trying to do. For the operationalized deep dive, I'd like to call your attention to a few areas of the Equity website. Cindy, if you bring up the front page of the website, please. As you see, this is the front page of the Equity website. And on this front page, you see 2 bright red buttons. These buttons are here to support our policy of responding to equity concerns within 24 to 48 hours. We have had 55 forms submitted since we opened the platform in October 2019. The Equity Dashboard, please, Esther. The Equity Dashboard enhances CSD's policy of transparency. I am really proud of this collaboration with Heidi Watley and her team in research and analytics who provided the data. Here, anyone can view where City Schools of Decatur is regarding racial disparities in real time and help to keep us accountable. The resource pages, please, thank you. The resource pages include over 300 items that provide support for parents, teachers, and leaders as we all share this equity journey. It also provides information regarding resources that address hate crimes connected to COVID-19 and other concerns. Next presentation, please, sir. A curriculum that misrepresents history or does not introduce opportunities for students to engage positively in their own learning is a disservice to students. However unintended, the consequences of such a curriculum may be disengagement, lack of connection, low self-esteem. City Schools of Decatur is working to decolonize our curriculum through a number of initiatives. Because curriculum is what we're talking about in this area, Dr. Bean and her dream team are integral partners in this work. Curriculum and Instruction does this with us in addition to already doing their own strong work in this area. You have detailed information about all initiatives in your packet, so I will just provide a brief description of each. The first initiative is the Equity in Education Task Force. This task force was created in an effort to fulfill the promises made by CSD regarding equitable curriculum, and it does work in multiple areas. For example, the Social Studies Task Force is a subcommittee of this group I just mentioned, and its work was accelerated when parents, teachers, and students began to complain about insensitive social studies curricula being used in the district. The Equity in Assessment Task Force has been formed to examine and improve and clarify CSD grading and other assessment policies. This summer, we did direct decolonizing work with our 8th grade individuals and societies teachers, who were an awesome team to work with. Doctors Tracy Laird and Regine Jackson from Agnes supported this professional learning. They bought books, they provided stipends for teachers, the Georgia Archives also contributed as well. And our final decolonizing initiative is JADE. JADE was a proposal originally called JEDI, and you heard it before, about a single course on anti-racism and social justice that will be taken by every CSD student prior to matriculation. But it has grown a life of its own. We invited students to give feedback to the course proposal, and as you would expect from our excellent CSD students, they ran with that. Julian Fortuna and Koan Roy Mehu, with the support of myself and Dr. Bean, expanded my little raggedy one-course proposal to an entire 3-course curriculum that they would like to see take place throughout the entirety of middle school. I owe Dr. Bean big time. My little department conceived it, and she jumped right in to help us achieve all of this decolonization work. In the case of the Equity and Assessment Task Force, she has taken the weight fully on her department, and that work is being led by Christian Gibbons. That information is in your packet as well. And of course, we are doing all of this too. You got it. Thank you. So, where are we with these things and how are they going? The racial equity tool and the equitable hiring tool are in use district-wide, and we are doing a refresher training in October. There's a collaboration with staff support for a training in January prior to making the use of the tool a mandatory process, meaning that you will have to state that you have used this tool before you are able to even hire. We are also adding new resources to the website constantly. Please be sure to look at it often because it changes often. With the decolonization work, with the Equity in Education Task Force, we are recruiting members. With the Social Studies Task Force, which again is a subcommittee, we have collected and analyzed data district-wide. Principals have been kind enough to support team members, and we are moving forward with that work. With the Equity in Assessment Task Force, that task force is meeting and recruiting teacher participants who will be paid to actually look very closely at our entire program of assessment and build something better, build back better. As far as the work with Agnes Scott, that collaboration is complete. And the young men who are now alumni, one at Georgia Tech and one at UGA, have asked that I emphasize that this JADE proposal is in planning stages. It is a draft. And there is also a pilot being created that may take place at Renfro this spring. That's the plan. So, as I conclude, I'd like to leave you with a few thoughts. Point one, equity is everyone's work. And if everyone is pitching in, to get it done, which they are in this district. Together we will win. It hasn't happened overnight, but it's happening. People are having conversations that they have never had before. People are doing work that they've never done before. People are questioning biases that they've never questioned before. So the work is happening. Point two, I know I fed you with a fire hose tonight, I apologize. But honestly, it really is just part of the work our department is doing. And again, I could do this all day. There's a lot going on. Point three, a lot of people ask why so much of our equity work focuses on Black students. I hear that all the time. I cannot emphasize enough that CSD is doing what we do regarding equity in order to you got it, pay the debt. We owe these students, and it's like triage. We have to pay attention to the students we have injured the most and help them to get better so we can help others to get better. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you for your report. I'll just start by saying there was a lot of detail, and I had to read through it twice to really understand all the different components of where, like, the different groups and how you're collaborating with other groups and how these, subcommittees are supporting one another, and, the work of the JADE group is being kind of folded into the work of the other groups who are also looking at curriculum. So thank you for that. This is where your work is leading to, which is where the, actual impact will happen in the classroom and to the students. I was particularly excited to hear about the work that you're doing regarding suspension prevention. That's something that has been a really difficult part of being a board member when some of those disciplinary situations have come to us over the years, and we have tried and have been seeking alternative ways to work with students to go through restorative practices, but we haven't quite had the framework in which to do it. And so I'm really excited that you are going to be actively creating a framework, because we would like to keep our students here, and we would like to work with them to help them understand, the consequences of their actions and to be better and to allow them to continue to be a part of our community. So I'm really excited about that and the constructive and proactive direction that, the Tale of Two Schools, CSD being one, I think, that is doing these restorative practices and helping these students in a positive way. So I'm really excited about that. So thank you for that and for all of your work. I did have many other thoughts and questions, but we'll have to, like you said, take it. This will be an ongoing conversation. Thank you.
I have a question. This is kind of small, and then I have a larger question or comment. But first, I appreciate the report. I think it's an outstanding report. I appreciate seeing all the good work and particularly the operationalized piece of this, because you can see the fruition of a lot of work that seems like it's beginning to land, and it starts happening. So I appreciate that. My very small point is on the teaching. I can't remember right now the acronym that you used for the hiring matrix, but when I was back on an SLT some time ago now, and SLT members were recruited to do the interviewing. At that time, at least, the process was somewhat haphazard to try to get SLT members available because, a lot of people have jobs during the day and they can't make it, et cetera. The result was that you had a team that was kind of thrown together, and it was going to be one team for the first day of interviews and a different team for the second day of interviews. Another is that the team members who are doing the interviewing wouldn't necessarily understand the reason to use a matrix. And I was one of those people. I was like, well, come on, we're having a conversation. I want to get a sense of this individual. And I understand that it's important to ask the same questions of each individual. And I understand that it's important to stick to the questions and to the rubric. But I didn't at that time. And I'm wondering, so what is all leading up to is how do we make sure that when we have these good ideas and practices, that they're actually implemented with fidelity when our actual interview teams are selected as they are, and I assume they still are because it's in our handbook, the SLTs are participating. And I guess I'd suggest, for example, that there be, at a minimum, for every SLT, so instead of before the interviewing occurs, that it's a training session for the SLT members. So they're going to be enlisted to do some interviews. Let's have a training at one time at the beginning of the SLT service, so that people get that, because I didn't get it. It took me a long time before I understood it. I do now, but I didn't know.
Thanks for the idea.
My other comment, and this is where I'm going to be misunderstood, which always happens, but I wonder if it would make sense to define some of the terms. And the one that catches me is anti-racist. I know what the term means, and I agree that we should be anti-racist. That's not my question. My question is, or my comment is that I know what it means because I've done a lot of reading. I don't think a lot of people know what it means. And I think that one of the problems that we are confronting as a society is that the discussion about race is being conducted by people who use words in different ways. And the people who are interested in equity have adopted a vocabulary that many of the people who are not actively anti-racist simply don't share. And as a result, words are used in communication between people, but we're not communicating because we mean one thing and the recipient understands a different thing. I think that that's what's behind this business about critical race theory and the Board of Education's atrocious resolution against it, which if I think the ideas were expressed clearly and understood, I don't think we have that. So I think that speaking clearly about these things is important. And I also think that some of these terms, and anti-racist is one of them, come with lots of baggage because, here's the handbook, how to be an anti-racist. Well, one of the things it says is that standardized tests are racist. And to be anti-racist, we have to eliminate standardized tests. That's not where we are as a district. And yet, some people are going to look at these terms and say, well, it says this, and then in the popular literature, that's what this means. That's not where the district is. Which is to say, I think some definition would be beneficial. And I would suggest that whenever we do a presentation like this, if we're going to declare ourselves to be anti-racist, we explain what that means. That was a long-winded comment, but that was it.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. James. Wonderful presentation. I'm a Robin Seed fan, so I love watching that clip. I appreciate the clarification about affinity groups, and we know that they're not limited to racial groups, but I understand that is our focus here in CSD. I had questions about Jade, because I was looking at the timeline. Is this timeline accurate? No, okay.
It's merely a proposal.
Okay.
The young men are just really fleshing out their ideal program and then scheduling that.
Okay. So right now, do we think that they're going to be the J curriculum will be starting doing advising in January, or?
I do think that we will be able to start a pilot of it in January. I do not think it will be a full rollout of Jade in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
Okay.
And right now, the young men are meeting with the person who's over our advisement classes, as well as meeting with the person who's over our counselors to talk about kind of a fusion of it with C-learning. So it can all take place at the same time, along the same path. And we can kind of prep students for the conversation through C-learning and then move into C-equity.
Okay.
I mean, not C-learning, move into C-equity as well, but then move into J.
Okay. And I'm really proud of this work as a school board member and to see our district, taking these initiatives. and I always give you credit for introducing me to the quote about paying the debt to Black students. And so my only thing is that what's wonderful about all of these initiatives is that all students will really benefit from them, right? And so, which I think is important, you know, to note that, because often folks think that it's only certain subgroups or demographics that really benefit. Now, I realize that, you know, by implementing restorative practices, then naturally, you know, the discipline disproportionality will start to drop. And, you know, by having culturally relevant educators and education pedagogy, that, you know, our achievement gap should start to close. But, you know, ideally we'll see that with other demographics as well, students with special needs and things like that, and just, you know, students of color in general. My only thing is, when I think of paying the debt, that, and James mentioned the word at last meeting, intentional, that there's something intentional as it relates to Black students. And, you know, what are some things specifically that would not be limited to Black students? But I was thinking initially, you know, Black college tours. Open to everyone, because anyone can attend an HBCU. But I would think that there would be a special attraction for our Black students to be to be taken on those tours and have access to those types of tours. I know that 2 years ago there was a proposal for a affinity group for Black students. I think it starts at 6 and goes through 12, and it's based on the Dora Milaje from Black Panther. And so I was wondering, you know, is that still in the works? You know, I would also, I'm always giving a shout out to Renfro's, the Jensen, YLOE, because those organizations have been here, and them getting the support, you know, that they need. And so to me that, you know, being intentional about repaying the debt, you know, what can that look like? None of it would be exclusionary, because those clubs are open to all students, but we know that they typically draw Black students.
So a couple of things. The thing that I find most interesting is whenever you refer to cultural in this particular situation, culturally responsive education, people automatically think students of color. Like white students don't have culture, right? Like everybody has a culture. So when we are catering to students' culture and trying to make a connection between the teacher and home and trying to build relationships, that's the path is right. That's a relationship with everybody. And that's doing what you need to do to know your students individually. So thank you for bringing that forward, because people are frequently like, well, you're just doing work for Black people. No, the work is for everyone, but the work hopefully will benefit Black students. That is my hope. As far as the organization that you mentioned, the Afrocentric Warriors and Doers, to be specific, we had to scale back on it because of COVID, so we weren't able to implement it when we wanted to. And we had a couple of different conversations about it. We talked about taking the funding and dedicating it to existing programs, and then spreading those existing programs to places in the district where they do not exist, versus creating an entirely new program. So that's where we are with it right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I piggyback the conversation Jane is referencing is, I also love pay the debt and the notion it comes from. But when we talk about things like eliminating suspension, to me, that's not paying a debt. That's just being a decent human being and figuring out what we need to do to treat people equally. And so I would love for you, and this leads into the conversation that I have, thank you for the website. Thank you for the work with the, what did you call it, the dashboard, where you can submit your equity concerns. One of the things that we've talked about over the years is, I hear from so many particularly young parents in this district for like, well, we're not doing anything, or there's racial inequality. And so Decatur did not invent racial equality we are in fact putting it out there. Yeah, in many ways, you're doing the work of letting people know things that many of us have spent our lives being blind to. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate the notion that we have something like a dashboard, because as a parent, then you have to deal with that. And the more people in CSD that know, you can go in here and complain about an issue or a situation, it will be addressed, is beautiful. The only comment that I have is I love that equity is all of our work. Part of that is using your office to put some of the work on these DEI groups that are popping up in DTA. I think Decatur is hungry for a mission from you, from this group, to parents, because the only way we're going to combat the truth that Lewis shared is I spoke to a member of the Georgia State Board. We were not having the same conversation. The whole time we were talking about why I thought it was valuable and he thought it was valuable in his way. And so that cultural humility has to be something we all get involved in. And I also want to echo what Jana said. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. The number of times that I've told people, oh, you know, Dr. Banks and what she's doing, it's great. Don't just say we're not doing anything. Step one in Decatur should be figure out what we are doing, and then how you could carry some of that weight.
Yes, Wendy Shin reached out to me a few days ago about a K-5 initiative that's taking place where those PTAs are coming, the DEI groups are coming together to try to coalesce their work. So I'll be meeting with them tomorrow and hopefully, you know, trying to streamline things there. And we just will move on. All the work that we can do with whomever wants to do it, we're trying to do it, so.
Thank you.
I have just one more quick comment, and it's kind of a question, and it's something maybe you have an answer to, or maybe it's something we could think about, but it has to do with the Equitable hiring tool. And I reacted because in the HR report, I wasn't really surprised, but it was interesting to see it in numbers that we have about 78% female teachers and 22% male teachers. And so the racial and gender equity tool specifies that we need to have at least one person of color and one woman or gender fluid individual on the interview panel. And I thought, is that really a problem? And shouldn't we make sure that we also have one man? Because I would like to also appeal to more men, because I have heard young men, young boys, you know, who are at elementary school going into FAVE, there are more male teachers at FAVE say, like, they're kind of shocked. They're like, oh my gosh, I can have a man as a teacher? And so, and I think that's really valuable to have that balance in our schools. So that was my only comment about that. I think the tool is great, but I thought that might be, like, we might have the opposite challenge than some other, you know, workplaces and industries, because we have a lot of female employees.
Thank you for bringing that forward. That is an excellent point. We are definitely wanting for men in the field of education. So I think when I comprised the tool, I think I was really just thinking the usual suspects.
Yeah.
Right? But you're right. Men are important in this area, in this business. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just wanted to thank you, Mary. Our vision for City Schools of Decatur is that we will build the foundation for children to be their best, achieve their dreams, and make the world a better place. And this equity work has been taking a long time, but it's so important that we build that strong foundation so everyone in our district, in our community, understands the work and lean into the work and knows what we're doing with the work. And when we talk about making the world a better place, that's the outcomes that we're seeing when we pay the debt. So thank you for really being the champion for this work for us. It is everyone's work, but you lead it with elegance, with grace, with humility, and just so passionate about it, it's contagious. So thank you so much, Mary. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think next thing on our agenda, what I have in my agenda is it future dates? Oh no, just some informational. It was the development report. That was just informational for the board. And, oh, here we go. And then the monthly data reports, those were just informational as well. Future dates, homecoming week activities are listed in there. Upcoming board meetings are listed in there. And some conferences, some workshops, our upcoming breaks. We know that this Thursday and Friday are our first early release days as a district. I'm really excited to have parent conferences and that dedicated time for our teachers to really meet and lean in with their parents and share how our students are doing. Any questions on upcoming dates? Okay, that's the agenda for today. Okay.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Furman, and thank you to my fellow board members. It's an honor working with you. The meeting is adjourned at 8:47.